Hello and welcome to the Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast,
which gives you, the listener, a series of hints and pointers on your journey as a musical artist.
providing you with interviews from those in the music industry, along with our own experiences.
Ben and James shine some light on the many pitfalls and opportunities that being a musician has to offer.
Last week Ben was up in Edinburgh speaking to Mike Livesley, aka Made by Mike, about his fascination with guitar pedals, building them, and why musicians want to use them. This week, we stay in Edinburgh with Mike for part 2. Here we get on to pedal combinations, software emulation, and multi-effects boxes.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 with me, Ben, and him,
James.
We're back in Edinburgh, James, back on Rose Street with Mike.
Oh, still in Edinburgh.
Yeah. With Mike and its second part of the pedals conversation.
Yes.
So this week we kind of get more into...
Yeah. Where'd you get to on this one?
Where do we get to? What do you mean, where do we get to?
Conversation-wise.
That's the way you said it.
Obviously, location-wise, we've established you're in Edinburgh.
Yeah, still in the same pub.
I didn't expect you were nipping to Glasgow for part 2.
Dundee. Yes, so the bar did get a bit busier, just for a pre-warning. And I do think they were asking, it was a certain potato-based conversation with the patrons next to us, mash or chips. So it's a conversation you have to have with the barkeep.
It's a tough decision.
It is, yeah. But this episode, Mike and I do talk a bit more about using modern technology to see what you're looking for before buying. Because live and
it's about time we got some modern techniques into this show. So
well, sometimes if it's broke, if it's not broke,
if it's broke,
fix it. But yes, we're like on about making versions of different sounds. We spoke about that a bit last time, but we'll get a bit more detail about making those sounds that you can't get a hold of anymore. Schematics, badly printed schematics.
Yeah, well, the whole host of stuff on how you can potentially be aware of a particular sound that a particular band or whoever use, and you might think, I fancy doing something that sounds at least similar to that. How the hell would you go about doing from listening to something to thinking, right, I can now start to replicate that? So there's some top tips.
Top tips? Oh, nice. That's better than a key fact. But he also mentions about another person in the pedal making community. So again, he's doing it for the right reasons. He's building because he loves to build pedals. He loves guitars, and as he mentions about a certain type of pedal, someone else builds them better, so he just directs them to them. And that's cool.
That is, yeah.
So I think we'll spoil a lot of it there. So let's get back into the conversation, and we'll.
You've had a cough for like a month.
I know, you got the doctors.
Well, yes, but you've also had a cough.
Speak to you soon.
I guess that's the other thing about guitar effects and stuff is that, or any effects really, is that I think it's a great kind of way in which for you to kind of play around with what's going on. And anyone who tells you that there's rules about like what order you have to put your pedals in and which ones you should have, like, is just talking nonsense, because it's as with all kind of, I think, musical decisions, right? You should just do whatever, like, make whatever sounds good to you, or like whatever like makes sense to you in terms of like what you're going for. And if you've got like an ethos or a manifesto, go with that. But like if someone tells you that like a compressor has to go before a distortion pedal, I would say that like you want to try it both ways around, see what it sounds like, and go with whatever you prefer, because these are all just kind of building blocks. They're all just kind of like little tools or whatever. So I guess, in terms of why you might want to do it, I'd say that if you're feeling like you are wanting to like expand the kind of the way in which your music can sound, to make different parts stand out from others, to make your guitar sound different to maybe another guitar that's in the same band as you, or even maybe to get more out of just one instrument, and maybe you don't want to keep, because people buy lots of guitars for the same reason. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, this is my guitar for sounding like very big and beefy in like rock, in like heavy rock songs, and then you might have like a guitar that you want to use for like your more balladry sort of moments or whatever. But often, that's the sort of thing equally these days you can actually achieve just with like, with a pedal or two, you can make your guitar sound quite different. So I don't know. It's one of these things that I think that some people never ever get to the point where they're like feel the need to do that, and that's like totally fine. But some people do like to experiment. I'd say, you know, if you're talking about the people of 12 years ago or something like that, like, you know, when they didn't have the plethora of options now, I'd just say like borrow whatever your friends have got. Mm-hmm. Go and play around with other people's equipment and see what you like, or you know, hopefully find a music shop that'll let you do the same thing. But I think that the kind of amazing thing that we've got these days is, you know, built into most people's phones and tablets or whatever, and easily accessible as quite cheap software on a laptop if you've got it, is like a DAW software, so you can get something like GarageBand in which to record your demos. And you know, when all this stuff came out, it used to be like software that was primarily based at professional studio people, you know, that it would cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and you wouldn't really be able to get much out of it if you weren't a professional in that environment. Whereas these days it's very easy to use, and bundled with a lot of this stuff is actually software emulation of things like amplifiers and effects pedals. So what I would advise people to do is actually to, if you've got a phone that can get something like iRig or Amplitude, these kind of programs on it, and you're interested in getting effects pedals and seeing what you know, before you shell out £100+ or whatever on something potentially old as well, that you might be really interested in because you've heard it in a particular piece of music with a certain musician using it, I would say try and hunt down like a little emulation of it or whatever, so that you can like just literally plug your guitar into your phone and muck about with it in that virtual environment and see whether it works for you. Because, you know, these days, unfortunately, everyone knows what they've got, like on eBay. You know, like there's no bargains to be had when it comes to getting hold of stuff which is sought after. The prices are driven really high. So I feel like that's one of the key advantages people have got nowadays, is that you can, as well as looking at things like YouTube videos, whatever, you can be like, do I want that? You can actually you can try it out for yourself. And these things are incredible, like the emulations.
I was going to say that because when I first started buying pedals, there is a lot. And it's not just brands. There's actually different types within that brand. So Boss, I know it's mentioned Boss a few times, and that's what I used to use.
Yeah, but they deserve mentioning because, you know, they're industry standard. They've been around for, I don't know, what is it, 30, 40 years now doing this sort of thing?
Possibly more,
Yeah, and so, you know, I think they're still a frame of reference for many people.
So I just kind of went in going, well, it's the kind of sound, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I did speak to the man in the guitar shop, and he was nice enough not to just go, buy this, buy that, buy that.
Which is refreshing sometimes.
Yeah, the ones we can't get rid of.
You want this really bad sounding compressor.
I did ask for a specific, what did I ask for? I think it was a chorus pedal. He went, what are you trying to sound like? And I went, this, that, and he went, you don't want a chorus pedal?
That's crazy. I'd love it if you... Do you remember what it was you were trying to sound like?
Well, I got a simple overdrive in the end.
Yeah.
And what was it, the one I bought? I think I actually had an old distortion pedal, which did exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah.
In Italy.
Yeah. That'll get you a long way, you know. That'll get you a long way.
Yeah. So, what would you say if I was thinking about buying, like, all the different types and the different benefits of different ones? I think you already mentioned it, i.e. is a good place to start. I like Block Party, or I like Nirvana, or Blur, Coxsone, whoever. Start there.
You know what? It is. I think the one thing I would say to people is, if you want to know how someone's making a particular sound, you're like, how could I get that? Then it is a good start to see what someone else is doing. The one thing I would say is, like, that way monsters lie, you know, because you may well get caught in a trap where you think that you have to have everything that guitarist has in order to sound like them or be successful or whatever. And I would say that that's not the case, but it's useful, I think, as a reference. And there is actually there used to be a guitar site which was called, I think it was called like Gear Rig or or something like that. If you search for rig, I think on Google,
find our old band.
Was that what you guys are called?
Yeah.
I think if you search for guitargeek.com, maybe it was that. But if you search for the guitarist you're interested in, so you might want to know what Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth plays. If you were like Kim Gordon, Rig or whatever, or Kim Deal from the Breeders, then the website I'm thinking of had these really cutesy little cartoon diagrams of what bits of gear they use generally, as has been, I think, unearthed by a whole series of anoraks taking photographs of what people are setting up on stage, before gigs. The front liners, you've got the people that are hardcore fans, and then you've got the gear nerds that are up there as well. So that was kind of a useful resource, but what I'd say is you don't need to get a one-to-one mapping on what someone's using. Mm-hmm. Because if someone's using expensive and vintage gear, or even something like a Boss pedal is not cheap to a lot of starting guitarists, there's actually a lot of options that are available in terms of off-market kind of reproductions of this stuff. I use reproduction in the most ethically friendly way possible. I mean, a lot of the time what these guys are doing is cloning the pedals that large manufacturers are making, but at the end of the day, I think being able to get, and people like Behringer pioneered this, to be honest. Behringer have always been a great way to get affordable gear. So if you need a PA or a mixer or anything like that, you can get a Behringer mixer for so cheap compared to a Mackie or whatever equivalent, or Focusrite, decent recording equipment. And I don't think it would be too libelous to suggest that they were conveniently inspired by the circuitry of the other circuits. So you're able to get something which is 80-90% of the way there, in terms of the construction. It might not be as bulletproof and stuff as some of the other, as the original pedals. And then surely in their case of they do these Boss clones, and in the case of those, they're made of plastic, they're not made of metal, and also they sometimes don't have the best bypass on them. When you turn the pedal off, you'll notice that your guitar doesn't sound maybe as great as it used to do before. Some of them suffer from that. But it gives kids the ability to get in there and get hold of a couple of pedals, 3 pedals maybe, for the price of one Boss one. Yeah. And that means that immediately you're away then, you're running, and you're able to kind of have a muck about and try these things. So yeah, I would say that if you're looking to a place to get started, then you could do worse than getting hold of a couple, 2 or 3 pedals that you've seen used by someone whose sound you like. But I would say if there was an affordable option, go with that, particularly at the start. Because, even when you get to playing live in front of a few hundred people or whatever, there's not going to be people in the audience that are saying, just don't think the upper mid response of that overdrive is quite the same as the Boss pedal. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're that guy's guitar got louder and more aggressive and sounds more harmonically rich or whatever, even if they're having those thoughts, you know what I mean? So it's in terms of getting your message across, particularly until it isn't going to bankrupt you to make these purchases. And I'm not saying you never should do it. I think that these days, going into that market is a great way for people to start. Yeah,
that's a good tip. Yeah. So one of the first things I got, because when I first started learning guitar, my stepfather relearned the guitar at the same time.
Nice.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it wasn't a competitive dad scenario.
No, well, maybe. But the good thing about him was he had a job, so he used to buy all this kit, and he bought a multi-effects box.
Amazing, right?
100 effects on it. And that's when I found, I don't know, it probably was a distortion or an overdrive. Yeah. I learned Smells Like Teen Spirit, and I thought, that doesn't sound like Smells Like Teen Spirit. Yeah. Whack this distortion, which just put the volume up 20 times. I went, that sounds a lot like it sounds like Teen Spirit. So, is that a recommendation you make? Buying one of these things that's got 100 effects in? You can't really use it live unless you commit to one sound.
Well, you know what? Those multi-effects, do you remember what it was that he had? Was it a Boss one? Or?
He has a Boss now, but I'm positive the thing before that wasn't a Boss.
Maybe a Zoom or something?
It was a Zoom,
yeah.
exactly what it was,
I used to have one of them at one point.
It did have a
one of the ones with a treadle, like a wah type.
Had a wah on it, and
maybe it was a
volume.
Maybe it was a. I think I remember there was like a. That were the volume. They were like the model up for the ones that I had. I had a 1010 which had no wah pedal or anything like that. It just had like 4 kind of programmable. Sort of foot pedal things with a whole bunch of effects. But the 2020, that was the one. I was like, oh, I want that guy. That's got like a wah pedal on it.
Yeah.
But those ones back in the day, I mean, they were great for getting a flavour, and it did it for you, right? And I remember at the time, it did it for me as well. Like I was able to kind of get sounds I couldn't get before, do a bit of exploring, figuring stuff out. These days, that technology back in the day was quite rudimentary, and I remember that Zoom pedal used to add like a ground floor of hiss.
Yes.
Which would be totally unacceptable these days. But you just put up with it. You're just like, this is fine. You know,
it's loud in the bar.
This is how I'm getting my echo sounds or whatever. But it was like brutal.
Yeah.
It was like having a TV on just on the fuzz. You know, on like in between channels. Mm-hmm. These days, multi-effects pedals are like way more sophisticated than ever they are. So yeah, I would say that. There's a lot of these ones you can get into, and you can get like a good flavour of things, and that's another way in. Actually, it's good you mentioned that, because I remember, I came across one recently that I had a little play around, and one of my friends had. It was like called a Yamaha Magistomp, and it wasn't one of those ones that has several different foot switches, so that you could set up your kind of whole set list worth of sounds, and you could tread on them all independently. It just had the one on-off foot switch, but. It had everything in it, like everything built in, and very very tweakable and tunable and stuff. You could dial sounds into it, and it also had like a lot of stuff these days. There's like a kind of phone interface or a laptop interface where you can kind of you get like a sort of more pliable way of changing those sounds, because the one thing that sucks about having a multi-effects thing sometimes is you're kind of buried in menus and like clicking through buttons and stuff, and what you really want is just a whole load of knobs that you can turn or whatever. So I think they've tried to work around that by giving you that ability to use an app or like a laptop to do that stuff for you. But they're equally a good way of doing it, I'd say, is to like get involved with those things. But the one thing I would say is that with multi-effects, it can be like it can be quite overwhelming sometimes. When you're delving into it and you're like, okay, do I want to use like Hall Reverb 1 or Spring Reverb 6? And like you'll often see like the names of controls within a pedal, and you don't know what it does. So you're like what should I set the resonance or the manual on this like flanger to? And you just don't know. Yeah. So sometimes it can be a little bit like overwhelming.
Yeah, like I say, that's how I started. And once I got a job and we were in the band, I decided to invest in the pedals.
What were you playing, like guitar and amp-wise?
I had an SG, Epiphone SG, and an Epiphone Les Paul. The first proper amp I bought, I got in a sale, and it was an Ibanez.
Oh, right.
And it was all right.
I don't think I've ever even sort of played in that, like seen an Ibanez amp.
It was cheap, and it was all right, and it was loud enough, but it was heavy. Proper heavy. Not as in like heavy rock, I mean weight.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them are, they're nuts, yeah.
And then a friend of mine who I used to work with, when we first started playing gigs, he went, I see you in a band. He went, I'm moving to New York for 6-7 months. Do you want to borrow this Marshall? I was like, yes, I do.
That sounds
and it was a beautiful amp. But then he came back, so I had to give it back to him, and I eventually ended on a Marshall.
Yeah.
So Les Paul, SG, both Epiphone, through a Marshall. Then I had a tuner, digital delay, distortion, overdrive, tremolo. Not that it wasn't a waste of money because I loved the tremolo.
Yeah.
But I only used it on one song, maybe two.
But that's the kind of that's sort of, I think that's kind of standard. Like it's a great sound. It's like that was one of the first effects. It used to be built into old Fender amplifiers and stuff, and Vox amplifiers like back in the day. Just because it's one of the simplest things you can do. It's just I just literally take the volume of the signal and just drop it up and down like using an oscillator.
Yeah, you should play with that one a bit, and then a compressor / sustain.
Oh yeah, like a Boss one.
Which the Blue Boss one, which just gave massive sound.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of step. And I bought one of those Boss boxes.
Oh, to keep them all in.
that was one of the best £100 I spent. It was expensive, obviously, £100 just to basically carry your pedals.
But the thing is, back in the day, like, getting a pedal board wasn't really like something that was very easy to do.
No.
Like, I remember that those Boss ones were around, but if you wanted something else, you'd have to make it yourself. Like, I can remember sticking, plywood together and then putting like Velcro on it and all that kind of stuff like that. Whereas these days, there's quite a few companies here in the UK that build them, which means you don't have to like pay horrendous amounts of money. And like, there's this thing as well, like there's like a few IKEA products which people have like hacked into. There's a few websites where people will show you how to take like something that's meant to be a shoe rack or a shelf or something like that, and you can make a few modifications to it, stick some Velcro stuff on it on the slats, and you get yourself a nice serviceable pedal board. So back in the day, this is before the IKEA thing happened. Like it used to be almost impossible to figure out how you were going to put the things on something and carry them to the gig or whatever.
Normal nails dots. It worked, but
that's a commitment, right? You're like, that's staying there as forever.
Well, if normal nails are listening, the dots weren't very good.
Oh, okay. Oh, so were they more of a kind of... They were more of a semi-permanent thing?
Yeah,
I see.
Strips,
okay, yeah. I thought you meant you just had, like a cage gun and you're just like squeezing out your sealant onto your pedals.
I thought about it, but as a quick fix, I used them and it worked to a certain extent, but the Boss box was beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool. So, a couple more things because I was just conscious of time.
Yeah.
So, without taking business away from you, what do you actually do? If I was to ring you up and say, I want to get this sound, let's say I want to sound like Malcolm's pedal from Pavement, do you tailor it to my needs?
Well, those are requests that I tend to get a little bit terrified at, right?
Okay.
Like when people come with like a particular guitarist in mind or they tell me a song, I get worried because there's a lot going on there. Like when you're listening to a piece of music or you're listening to a band or whatever, like you've got like the guitar the guy's using, the guy or girl's using, the pickups, the amp that they're connected to, the pedals they're involved with, they're part of the sound, the microphone they've also used to record it, and any kind of studio trickery that's going on as well by the producer and stuff. So like whenever someone comes to me with like a very specific like requirement like that, I'll do a bit of research to determine whether or not like there is a simple answer to that, and that the answer to that might be that Pavement sound can traditionally be knocked together from, I don't know, like a fuzz pedal, like a big muff pedal, and maybe a compressor. I don't know, but so I'd get a bit afraid because the last thing you want is for someone to think it's very simple and that like you tread on this box, you're Stephen Malcolmus, or whatever, right? Like,
of course,
I think he would probably be the first to tell you that there's more to it than that,
Exactly, yeah.
But what I do. So what I do is I make pedals by hand, okay? So, and it's grown kind of organically from just making booster pedals. But I have like a sort of what you might call like a standard array of effects that are on my website. But I also do kind of custom stuff all the time. And I'd say like roughly half the pedals I build are custom shop one-offs, and half the pedals I build are like more standard designs. And so a lot of the time people are coming to me because they kind of know what pedal they want. So, I had a guy recently was interested in like a particular octave pedal, which isn't available anymore, but he'd managed to kind of hunt down a schematic for it, and he asked me to like quote what I'd need to make it for him. And, a lot of the times also people are wanting like combinations of things. So, you had your overdrive and distortion pedals. Like a lot of the time people are quite wanting like 2-in-1, like kind of an overdrive and a distortion pedal, or two different flavors of overdrive or two different flavors of distortion kind of built into the same pedal, maybe with like a toggle switch so that you can actually flip the order of them around, so it was almost like you physically were picking them up and plugging them around in the same order, because pedals interact differently depending on what order they're in. So what I tend to do is I just talk to people about what they're interested in and see whether it will be a good fit, whether I can actually do what they're after. So in Ross's case, I remember one of the pedals that I put together for him was he played in the studio. He played on this Maestro phaser pedal, which was like a really unique kind of phaser, which has actually got like a rocking mechanism like a wah, which affects the rate at which the phaser's turning. And so it's a real kind of oddball thing from the 70s. and I couldn't recreate that part of it because it literally is kind of it's a very strange looking design. You can't get hold of any of those moving parts.
Could it have been
anymore.
a design flaw, as in like it just got it by accident?
I think no, that it was deliberately done so that it had this kind of treadle-like action. But what I did find was that someone had reverse engineered that pedal, and the schematic was freely available. So I could make him a version of the pedal which had the same controls, the same sound, but the controls were just knobs, just traditional knobs type thing. So sometimes that's what happens, is that you have like someone coming to you with like a specific idea, and sometimes you can't like nail it exactly, but you can come up with something which is good, and so that's what I do. So I try and keep it all affordable, but I'm never afraid of telling people that they might be better suited going for like a readily available pedal already. Yeah. If I can't build something for someone cheaper than so they can get it elsewhere, then I just direct them to where they should be buying it.
That's ethical.
Well, at the end of the day, there's no point. Yeah. Because like the only reason that anyone at all, I think, knows who I am is generally through like word of mouth, either through social media where they can talk to me directly, or because they've seen one of my pedals on someone's pedal board and they talk to them about me, or they see a video of mine on YouTube or whatever. Like I do not spend any money on marketing, and I don't put any of my stuff out there in shops or anything like that. So they already know, they're talking to me, and so like I just see them as like I would never want to hoodwink anyone or like or do them out of any money or anything, because I just ultimately am doing this because I really enjoy to do it. Yeah. And the best thing is hearing back some music that someone's made with the pedal I've made, or just hearing like how happy they are or whatever with it. Like that's the real reason that you do it. It's the best kind of job satisfaction. So a lot of the time people come to me because they're after like particular old fuzzers, like they're from the 60s that you can't get hold of anymore. And I always point them in the direction of a guy called Ian down in Birmingham whose company is called Ghost Effects, and he is like absolute guru of that stuff. Like that involves an almost painstaking level of like accruing old transistors that were built back in those, in the 60s and 70s, and they do not make them anymore, and they will never make them anymore. They're old germanium things, and they basically all vary, and they're totally hard to judge from when you're trying to buy them whether they're going to be any good for you or whatever. You actually have to take them home, put them on a specific circuit, test the gain, check whether they're going to be alright, and he does all that. Wow. And he produces fantastic fuzz pedals which make people really happy, and I've got no time for any of that. That is all really, really hard work, and the thing is, that's his niche, man. That's what he loves. He loves all that. And he also wires them beautifully, like point to point. He builds them in like the old style. He's almost like one of these guys that works on like a croft up in the Highlands of Scotland, who just lives the old way. Like he builds pedals the old way, like as if nothing's ever changed. And it's to his credit, like it sets him apart from other people because he has that attention to detail. That's cool. So yeah, like. I think it's about finding the right fit. Some people don't. Some people are gonna be enthused with what I can do, but other people it's not for them, and that's fine.
Excellent. So, just part of the interview, Mike, when we talk about the charity that you may be involved with or have a close attachment to. So, is there anything you want to highlight on the podcast that bring awareness to or highlight to the listeners that we have?
Well, in terms of involvement, this is going to sound weird. I'm going to segue swiftly from this to what I really think people should be putting their money towards at the moment. But one of the pedals I build, the Echo Bass, is like a tape echo simulator, and I didn't design that pedal. A really clever guy off one of the DIY guitar effects forums did, and I was willing, when I set it up, when I built the first one for myself, and I wanted to start offering them to customers, I was willing to give him a commission and pay him for using his design, but in the end, he didn't want that. So what I actually do every time I sell an Echo Bass is that 10% of the proceeds go to Oxfam, because I also wanted the money to go to. But that's more of his goodwill than mine. Okay. But what I would
you could keep the money if you wanted to. So,
but what I would recommend everyone has a think about. We're recording this on the run up to Christmas. But what I tend to try and drive people towards is food banks at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very important for everyone to be aware of how much people are depending on them at the moment. It's something that very much I think a lot of people are trying to keep in the shadows. But I think it's important to know that without us donating to food banks, people are going to not be able to feed themselves and their families. And I think that it should almost be, it would be great if it was part of people's weekly routine that when they're shopping for themselves, they also take a little bit else to a food bank. So I'm a big Liverpool football fan, and what they've started doing is, whenever they have a home game, they set up a collection point outside, and people go in the game.
Do as well,
which is fantastic. And what we're going to do this Christmas, and what I urge other people to do, whether or not this is recorded before or after Christmas, put out before or after Christmas, is to consider doing a food bank advent, whereby every single day of December, instead of opening an advent calendar, traditionally you put an item of food into a box, and then on the 24th you take it down to your local food bank, so that you've got 24 items of food for sure, which are going to go to a family when they need it over that Christmas period. So that's the thing that's nearest.
That's a really good idea. If this doesn't go out before Christmas,
I'd be worth tweeting it out.
Yeah.
It's just get it out there on 1st of December, and then it will just give people a little reminder. And it's because as soon as someone's got a box set aside with one thing in it, it's going to trigger their mind. I think every day when they walk past it, they'll be like, "Got to put something in that." And even if they're not physically putting in the 3rd and 4th items on the 3rd and 4th of December, you would hope that on the 24th there'll be 24 items at least in there, and it all kind of goes out.
That's really good. That actually, there's a baked goods store that was created near where I live. You can get an advent calendar with them, and it's £24, and you get various different baked goods. I think it's probably a better way to spend your money is buying 24 cans of, I don't know, tomato soup or beans or whatever. It's probably a better way to spend it.
Cereal boxes, all sorts.
Yeah, I think that's.
Although to be honest, baking is excellent as well. So
that company that bake products is good, but I would say spend your money on this is probably more important. Excellent. So that's really good, Mike. What we'll do is we'll put all your details in our show notes, and it'd be very cool if anyone does get in touch with Mike and buys a pedal off him. If we can hear from you, just to
of course,
just to see this, just connect the dots, and see if anyone who's listened to this bought a pedal, used it, and what the song sounds like.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I guess the only other thing I was gonna say is that I think the one thing that this podcast and other things are really kind of representing is that these days, community is it's not just a locality thing anymore, and it's really great for musicians to be able to share information, help each other out, and stuff like that. And if me, you fall out of or you don't hit your heights or whatever, from being a musician or whatever. I've been I've had a lot more longevity, I guess, or contact with musicians from being a pedal maker than I have when I was in a band or whatever. I think you shouldn't see that as the end of it, right? You can make podcasts like yourself where you interact with people in that way, but also if there isn't a scene near you, just make one, right? In terms of if there aren't gigs on for unsigned bands, all that takes is you being the middleman between a venue and some bands, right? And there's so many people out there who stitch everything together in terms of keeping unsigned bands playing, and I feel that's a hugely important thing. And I think you should people that do that are doing a great service, and often I think they're kind of unsung heroes or whatever like that. So I just feel at the moment we're in a kind of bit of a golden age for this sort of thing. People can find each other easier than they ever could before. So it's good times.
Excellent. Can't think of a better way to end it. Thank you.
So here's something. Not being the guitarist, I wouldn't have necessarily had a clue one way or the other, is that in Mike's well-educated opinion, the order in which you put your pedals on your pedal board and what connects into what, there is absolutely no right or wrong answer. They may well give you a different sound depending on what the order is that you put them in, but
it's minimal.
That's one, it could be minimal, but two, it's whatever works for you.
Yeah, when I had my box that you put the pedals in.
I did often wonder if the orange one was somewhere else.
I probably did minimal research, but in my head was that was the loudest pedal. So I want to, if I want to beef up the sound prior to it, I'll use that to lift it up rather than lifting up something and then changing the sound of a distorter pedal. I don't know I can't remember if there's any science or guesswork involved in it. Probably guesswork. But the way I had it was, I had a tuner at the start, so I cut.
What can be trial and error as well.
Yeah. And I think you know what, I probably just got used to it in that order. In my head I had like the quieter sounds.
Well, you don't want to swap it around and then mid-gig where you press the thing that's normally the
tuner.
Overdrive pedal.
Oh, hello. Cut the sound out. Yeah, so I always had the tuner first though, because that's just where it was to tune up, and I had the loudest ones towards the end. In my head that sounds logical. It may be to some people, but as Mike said, it doesn't really matter. It's whatever comfortable really, and where you get used to the pedals, what you need it for. But yeah, it's something that's probably worth knowing, because you might spend ages going, what's the right way to do it? That's whatever's comfortable for you.
Yeah. Well, again, tuners, a tuning pedal being something that everyone should get. That was one of his opening sort of gambits, wasn't it? You know, everyone needs a tuning pedal, irrespective. Because again, to me, not being a guitarist originally, I would have thought, what? Why the hell? Can I not just got an app on my phone? Can I just use that type thing? You know, no. but clearly not. You know, in your board, you need.
It was probably the best pedal I bought.
These things come out of tune pretty quickly, don't they?
They do.
Particularly when it's hot on a stage.
Yeah, and you play it. Well, we played particularly quick. We were quite a quick band. A lot of bar chords in there, so that does detune it quite quickly. And you're right, the heat's the main thing. But that was probably the best pedal I had for functionality. But the rest of them, and you can just chop and change and take things off, and as he said, like borrow pedals, use other people's pedals, get a feel for them or sound for them, if you will. Just see what works for you, because you might think I like to sound like this particular band, so I'll get that pedal, use it once, and go, I sound nothing like this band. Quit it. It's like no. Like, see if you can work it out. If not, sell it on. You can, because they're not going to depreciate that much in value. And if you work it out quickly that you don't like it, you can take it back. So, like we mentioned in the previous episode, using them is like in the shop, practicing them out, like seeing what you like. Plus, there's different brands as well. Like Boss is, as he said, the standard.
The main guy.
Yeah, they are really durable and they are good pedals. But
well, I don't recall yours ever breaking.
The distortion one, I think I caught it once, and it popped up. Right. That was it. But I must have just untied.
They're built to be stood on, yeah. So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They've got to be fairly durable.
Exactly. But he was saying about plastic ones and stuff. So like, there probably is ones in the market which aren't as durable as the other.
Massively stamp on them.
Yeah. But if you're if you're a really like stompy punk band or a metal band and you're blasting on them with heavy boots, for example.
Yeah.
They can easily break. With a sandbar, it's not too bad.
No, well, a rubber sole is going to do limited damage to your pedal.
Oh, maybe not to your foot, though. But talking about using them in the shop, though, there is something we've talked about using your phone. Or you just mentioned your phone there with an app. You can get apps now which emulate
I like sounds. The whole emulator bit.
Hard to use on stage.
Well, yeah, it's not going to...
Unless you're in a...
work. But if having sort of basically, we've not done music for years, but having GarageBand on a phone and being able to plug your guitar into your phone and then just being able to listen to here's what it would potentially sound like, or any of the other apps that are available. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was a fairly simple and maybe obvious once you know it, but great way of finding, if there's hundreds of different potential sounds pedals, then getting some software, even if you've got to pay a small amount of money for that.
And I bet it has a lot on them.
Software, yeah, that's potentially going to save you a hell of a lot of money in buying the actual pedal and finding that ain't the sound for me.
And I bet it's good for recording as well. Like recording straight into the phone or straight in your iPad or straight into a bit of kit and modifying in the sound. Maybe I'm just I like the pedals themselves.
Certainly not a live thing, but to use as a introduction to understand whether a particular sound is right for you, that just made perfect sense, and a much cheaper entry into the world of pedals, I guess. So you do that, you get your emulator type apps on your phone or whatever, and you think, right, I think they're the ones. Then you go into your music store, or you go online and buy maybe some of the cheaper plastic versions, see if they're working. You buy 3 for the price of 1, I think he said, type example. You say, actually, they're out of those 3, those 2 are the ones that I want, and then maybe in a year or however long's time you then buy their expensive main versions.
Yeah.
Seems like a logical progression.
It does, yeah. It does. So one of the things that an emulator might be able to do as well, which kind of links into what Mike does. So if you, like was mentioned in the previous episode, have a particular band that you like, have a particular song, and you love that sound, but you can't find it anywhere, it probably will be on an emulator somewhere, or a version of it. And then someone like Mike could probably build it for you. So you've got it on stage.
Wow.
It's trying to find those rarities and that. I think that'd be quite cool as well.
I think so, because if you take someone like Mike, right, now, yes, you could go to Boss or whatever and buy whichever ones, but they're by definition going to be the same pedal that any number of other people have got. Now, again, going outside of my level of knowledge, but there'll be an element, I'd have thought, that a distortion pedal is a distortion pedal is a distortion pedal. But then I'd imagine,
to a certain degree,
there'll be quirks within that, that if someone like Mike's built you a bespoke pedal, it's going to sound slightly different compared to the off-the-shelf standard Boss pedal or whatever it might be. So I can totally see why a Ross or others would go to, when you've got to the stage where this is a real serious sort of thing, your music, and I really want that specific type of sound. I can totally get why people would go to someone like Mike and ask for a custom sort of pedal to be built. And it would be better. I'm with you there. It would be sort of like if you go to a gig and it's kind of like, oh, you've got that Boss one as well, versus, ooh, what's that? And it's a bit different.
And Mike's designs are pretty cool as well. I like them as they're quite small pedals, but like the design on the colours he uses, and you're right. It's kind of like that own.
It's different, isn't it? I like it.
I think if I was to buy pedals again, I'd probably look into that more, whether it was Mike or someone else, depending on the type of pedal. And that really segue into about what he talked about the fuzz pedals that the ghost effect does. So he mentioned that his friend in Birmingham, who makes the pedals better than he does at a better cost, so he just directs them to him. So it's like it's that community thing again as well, doing it for the right reason. One of the things that Mike said was that one of the best things he gets is knowing that that song is produced with his pedal. Kind of like a nice gratification. You might have made a bit of this money, a bit of that money, but
there's a bit of something
artisticness to it
that goes down in history forever on a album sleeve or wherever. They can go, you know what? Well, I helped create that sound or whatever.
And all of a sudden, that's one of your favourite songs in the album, even if it's not the one that you like. But I remember when I was younger, I used to love getting singles which had B-sides of like live songs that I was at. So it's that little connection to the music, and I think that's what it's all about more than anything. Music connections and that. So similarly, if you can either, I don't know, produce the sound that Ross used on a certain track, you're more likely to buy that album. But also, it's just like that, like little, see here, the guitar on this. I built that.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be quite good. So it was something that Mike mentioned, that again, one of those things, once he said it, I was like, I can imagine people do that. When he was talking about the hardcore fans at the start of a gig who start to photo the various pedal setups and things that people have on stage before they come on. And these things are typically then on the internet.
Well, now, yeah, definitely.
So I had a search for the what was it? Guitar Geek website that he mentioned that has them all, and it looks like someone else has bought that domain. It just redirects to someone's YouTube channel now.
Right.
So it looks like that database, well, whether it still exists somewhere, possibly, but that link doesn't.
That's a shame.
I'll see if I can do more digging, but I think irrespective of using that, if you have a particular band, guitarist, whatever, that you want a quick internet search, and from what I've seen in just a bit of testing that I've done, is that you can typically get some good images and other bits. For some, they go into real detail of the, like you said, the whole specs and schematics and all the rest of it. I guess it depends on how big the guitarist is. If it's one of the biggest guitarists and one of the biggest bands in the world, then you'll find a load of stuff. If it's a smaller one, you might find it harder to get that. But yeah, it's clearly a thing. People constantly take photos of what people are using, what kit and gear that they've got on. So
you can see more of Mike's stuff at his website.
Yes,
madebymike.co.uk.
Yeah,
so you can see the designs that we were talking about, testimonials of what people have used.
Put links in the
definitely
the show notes.
And if you are thinking about pedals, and you've got pedals, or you're thinking of getting them, have a little look at Mike and see what you think. Maybe there might be something there you think, well, actually, you know what? That's the exact sound I'm going for. Boss don't do it.
Well, the great thing is, like, if you explain to Mike, I'm thinking of this is what I'm after, then he's certainly, from our experience, seems like such a genuine guy. He'll either be like, yes, I could do that, absolutely, and this is what you're looking like, or this is how much, what it would take, or no, that's definitely not what you're after. You really want to be thinking about something else, or here's another guy who could probably do that. What you're after better than me. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me to go to someone. He also said it's not like you need a one-to-one mapping of, so if you see famous guitarists set up and you want to do it, it's not like you need all 7 different pedals that they might use, or however many it might be, and it doesn't have to be the same brand of pedal that they use or whatever. There's ways and means of going about getting 80 to 90% of that same sound at a fraction of the cost, which again, if you're starting out, you might just do that 1 or 2 ones that get you the majority of the way there, sort of thing. So
yeah, and if you do go to Mike, say hello from us. It'll be quite nice to know that, like Mike getting the sound on the Future Heads, that we've sent someone their way to find Mike.
Well, it's building the community, isn't it?
It is, and he mentions that at the end as well, about building the community of like different people on the internet, of
totally.
What people do,
it sounds like a sell here, but we are absolutely taking no commission of any sort, nor would we want to from Mike. Nope. But no, it was more the fact he was just a genuinely spot-on bloke.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, very relaxed in the pub in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So,
gets us on to charity.
This is the second time a charity, similar charity, have popped up with food banks. So Paul Smith, I think Paul.
Your mate Paul.
Yeah, Paul mentioned it on the episode 1 about food banks and his work that he does, and Mike mentioned the same thing. One of the key things he mentioned, or the differences, because it was before Christmas when the conversation, was the Christmas Advent. So every time you go to the shop, buying 1 or 2 things over the course of November, December, before you know it, you'll have 25 items to drop off. So we did that. We dropped it off at the Newcastle Food Bank, actually at Newcastle match, because they always set up before Newcastle matches. 25 items was relatively easy to get. It was only around about tenner, so that is quite a lot of money to some people. It is a lot of money. But if you think about it, 7 items could be about $2.50. It was very heavy to carry.
That was your biggest challenge.
Yeah, that was. I forget how far where I park when I don't go for a drink is to the St James's.
Yeah, that's why I tend to do it at the supermarket
each
week. For doing the weekly big shop, then an extra tin of soup or whatever. There's a collection point right after the tills, and banging it goes. But however you do it, and I think it's obviously good that there's a push around Christmas on this sort of thing, because it's often a time of year where there's a real pinch for a lot of people, and that's a good thing. But I also think there's a bit of making sure it's a year-round.
Yeah,
activity.
definitely. It's quite easy to do as well. If your food bill's about £40, an extra 40-50p for two, you can get 2 tins for that.
Yeah,
that will go a long way.
Definitely.
So it's something to get behind.
Agreed. Coming up next week, Ben is at the Cluny in Newcastle speaking to Shopping about band ethos and decision making, self-releasing versus label, and control over image.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast.
Big thank you for tuning in, and remember to stop by iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
While you're there, it would be amazing if you could leave a rating and a review.
All the show notes can be found at www.acpgmusic.com, and if you want to get in touch,
email us your questions, any feedback and any suggestions to info@acpgmusic.com.
That's it for now. Keep supporting upcoming artists,
and we'll catch you next time.